Hey everyone, welcome back to another falcon farming video. It's been a while since I've uploaded something, but I've been doing a lot in the meantime. I've got a lot to show you. It's currently raining outside. So when the rain stops, I'll be planting some seeds, which I'll show you right now. Oh, it's in reverse because of the camera. There you go. They're a green manure mix. This is summer and spring, and I have planted out the front some winter and autumn crop. So it's a cover crop that you plant in between fruit trees or just on the ground in general. And the idea is that you let it grow to full size, you chop it and drop it, and that creates another layer of manure, or green manure, and compostable material to enhance and improve the soil. So they're mostly nitrogen fixing plants, so like legumes and stuff. There's some comfrey, and I think there's some buckwheat and lucerne in there. So I'll be planting it in between the fruit trees just to give a ground cover, stop some runoff of water, stop the land from slipping down, and enrich the soil, stop the sun from evaporating the moisture out of the soil. So instead of putting a layer of mulch like wood chips, I will be putting the cover crop, which is a layer of plants. So underneath that layer, I will have all the biodiversity of bugs and wildlife. So a few weeks ago, I started an online permaculture design course based on this by Bill Mollison. It's Permaculture Designer's Manual. It's really thick. Over 500 pages. The course is 28 weeks long. I'm in week 4 at the moment, I think. No, week 5. So 1, 2, and 3 weeks is study, and then the 4th is revision, and then you just keep repeating that until the 28 weeks is up. So I'm hoping by the end of it I'll have all the knowledge I need to start designing a permaculture system, so in the future when I get some land I can develop the most sustainable and regenerative garden I can imagine. Other than the seeds and starting the permaculture design, it has taught me, well, as a part of the permaculture design, it has taught me to start taking notes and observe my surroundings. So what I've been doing is keeping a diary. So I've got a diary of everything that, well, only recently I've started it, since I started the course, which was, I started it 2 weeks into the course. So I've just been noting down what I've been doing in the garden each day. So picking some cherry guavas. So initially I just started saying that I was picking them. It was morning fog and medium cold that day. So that just notes for next year. I know that on this day it should start to change from a warm summer to a rainy and more cold leading into winter. So I was picking the yellow guavas starting about here, and I didn't take note of how many I was picking at the time, but I thought it was a good idea because I'll graph it eventually once I've picked all of them. So as you can see, I picked 7 there, and guavas tend to drop all their fruit at one time. So 17 that day, 4, then 19, then it jumps up to 33 and 35, and 35 again, and 22 and 27. And I reckon I've picked about 200 already, and there's probably another 100 left on the tree. So maybe, including the ones that I missed at the start, I think I'll get about 400 off the tree. So that's a good indicator. So next year I can say I planted the seedlings on, I'll see what day it is. Today I sprinkled the remaining seedlings over, so once the rain dies down I can venture out and show you what I did. I filmed me sprinkling the seeds earlier. So here the cover crop sprouted. Notice the seeds are almost sprouted, and I started soaking the seeds just here, and then I planted cover crop. Another thing the permaculture course has taught me already is to try and work in as much elements into the system as possible. So have as many things feeding off one another to create the most efficiency out of a system as possible. And my friend gave me this, which is a composting cannon. I gifted it to him years ago, but he was never able to use it, and he's been keeping it, so he's like, oh, you can have it back. So the idea of it is that you put these little cardboard cylinders with holes in it, you slot it in the ground inside your vegetable garden. So if you've got like a square vegetable garden, dig a hole in the middle of a garden and you plant this. It's got a little cap so no flies or anything can get in it. And it's got a plunger. So what you do is you just put all your vegetables and stuff down the middle and squish it down, and it encourages worms to come more centralized into the garden, and it encourages the worms to spread their worm manure all around the garden instead of having it at a compost, which is away from the vegetable garden, and having to manually hand all the compost into the garden. So I shall be putting these in my vegetable garden, and I'll probably replicate it for the remaining gardens. So I've only got 3 here, so that'll probably last, like I'll put 2 in each garden. So I'll only be able to do 1.5. And I think I'll just get some like plastic tube or something and try that in the other gardens to see what effect it has. As you can see, it's still raining just a little bit. I've got the rest of the seeds here, so I'm going to sprinkle it around the front of the yard. So I've sprinkled the seeds from here up, across and down so far, and I'm gonna try and sprinkle the rest up on the top part now, because it's supposed to be raining for the next few days, so they should germinate just perfectly. What I'll do here is I'll sprinkle the seeds out where I want them to grow, and then I'll come through with a hard steel rake and just turn the soil over a little bit just to get the seeds underneath the surface so they're not sitting on top so birds can't eat them. And they need to be planted about 1.5 to 2 times the depth of the seed. And as you can see, some are tiny, but then some like this are like, it's an actual pea. So they need to be planted about 1 centimetre to 2 centimetres deep. And the other ones, they're pretty good to just sprinkle around on top, and they don't have to be buried. So they should germinate just fine by sitting on top, but the big ones, they kind of need to be pushed into the surface. You just do a little thumb mark and then just drop it in and then cover it up. Or when you have it on the surface, you just rake it. Well, not like that, just rake it like this. And that's good enough because it'll send its little sprout out into the ground, and then its first little leaf sent up into the sky. Here's a perfect example of that. It was just sitting on top and it's trying to shoot its root out, but it can't dig into anything. So I'm going to plant it with its root facing down and bury it back up. All done. As you can see, the guava tree has got lots of guavas on it recently. And I've got an empty packet to collect them in. Blip blop bloop. There we go. There's a few methods of collecting a guava. One, you can just pick them up off the ground when they fall. You kind of got to get it every day because you do get little grubs coming along and picking them up and eating them. Or there's another way where you can shake a tree and like that one, it falls off. Or the third method is to check the stem and it's just a little bit yellow, or when it's starting to turn woody. That's another yellow one, it should pop off easy. Yep. When it starts to turn woody, that's when it's basically going to fall off. That one's still a little bit green, just on the near the stem. Oh, sorry, near the branch. So that's probably not quite ready yet. And where's a good one to look at? See, those they're green, and that one's a little bit green as well, so they're not quite ready. And it's starting to rain quite heavy, so I'm going to hurry up and finish what I'm doing and get inside into the dry. It's just started to rain quite heavy at the moment, which sucks, but I've got to get out with this rake and turn those seeds over before it gets even heavier, because it's going to bucket down about 90 millimeters today, which is a lot. And I don't want the seeds washing away, because it will in torrential rain, which it's going to happen. So I've got to get out, I've got to get wet, and I've got to turn these seeds over before they get washed away. It's going to be hard to film with one hand and turn it over, so I'll just give you a demonstration. That's what it's going to be doing. So check back when I've finished. Alright, so that's what it looks like. Let's bucket down now. So I'm going to get inside so I don't get wet. So this cover crop that I put out the front, it's a nitrogen fixing cover crop. It's got rhizobial bacteria which are beneficial to all the other fruit trees, so I'm planting it in between the fruit trees. It stops water runoff, so it allows the water to soak into the ground a lot better. It breaks up the soil because they send their tap roots down. It's chop and drop, which means at the end of each season there's some perennials and some annuals in the cover crop seed mix that I got. I think there's one of the main ones is comfrey, which you can chop and literally just lay the seeds on the ground. So you're building up the biomass and the soil of the ground out front. So you're turning the soil from clay soil, breaking it up into highly rich, nitrogen rich, perfect compost soil. Just estimating how many guava I've got. There's about 10 or 12 in each packet, so 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 20, 100, and 20, 40, 60, 80, 200, 220, 240 yellows, and 2, 4, 6, 80 red guavas. Should make a few kilograms of jam and should last me maybe a week? Nah, more like a year. It's really starting to bucket down now. So the seeds I've sown just then, I haven't soaked in any water. The ones I sowed previously, I soaked them in a bucket of water for a day before I planted them, just to activate the germination period. When I planted them, or spread them out across the ground, it was a day before it was due to rain, and it's been raining ever since. So I soaked them in water, sprinkled them on the ground. The next day it didn't rain, so I hosed them in, gave them a little bit of water. Any larger seeds that were poking above the ground, I pushed into the ground, into the soil, and watered. Then the next day it rained, and it's been raining ever since. So they needed to be pre-soaked, but the ones I've put out there now don't need to be, because it's raining now. I'm a little bit worried that they'll wash away, but hopefully not. I can see a few out there. I'll try and zoom in, but are still sitting on the surface, just those two next to each other in the middle of the screen. They should be fine. I don't think they'll wash away. So I'll go out tomorrow and do the same thing as I did before. Any that are sticking up, I'll just dig a little hole with my finger and push it in a little bit further. So in a few months, that should be all luscious green lawn out the front. It's finally stopped raining enough. Well, stopped raining completely. It's been drizzling all day, just a little bit too much for me to come outside and show the little seedlings that have sprouted. So I'm doing it now. Check this out. I have no idea which one's which, but they're all different shapes and sizes, which is pretty cool. There's a little one there. Another little pea. I didn't spread these ones out very well because they were wet. They were hard to like chuck on the ground. So there's quite a few clusters about, and you'd get the occasional like pea right next to a pea, like that. But it's a pretty even spread. Hopefully, once it's fully established, they'll all it'll fill in the gaps. So it'll sort of just be a complete ground cover rather than patchy. But I'll keep you updated over the next few weeks as to how it's getting on. My vegetable garden's out the back. Aren't looking great. I've been neglecting them because I've been building a bike. But I ripped everything out of that and all the grass. So I've just left like a little bit of grass and a few plants. And these ones, I sort of chopped the grass along the edges and folded it inside to like cover it up and drown it out. And I'll be doing the same to that and the one behind it in a few weeks. But I've been neglecting it, but once I get back into the swing of it, I'll be checking it more often and it'll be looking absolutely perfect. As well as the cover crop that I'm planting out the front, I've got all these flowering plants. Some are edible, basil, nasturtium, and borage, and a few of these others are edible flowers as well. But I'll be planting them around the edges of the gardens and in and amongst the garden beds, so the bees are attracted into the actual garden where all the other vegetables are planted. So one thing I learned over the last season of gardening is that planting strawberries in one patch along here is a big no-no. You plant strawberries like you plant vegetables in the garden and never one next to each other, because they're very susceptible to disease, and planting them in the garden and apart from each other will give you the most space for the strawberry to spread its wings, and you won't get any of the diseases associated with it, and it's a lot harder for bugs to find the strawberry in amongst other vegetables. So planting it, starting to rain, planting it in the garden with other vegetables is the way to go. You can't see it now because I've pulled it out, but I did have the watermelon and pumpkin in this garden bed. It was planted there and it was just spread all through the back there and all over underneath the clothesline. That's a big mistake as well. In the future, I won't be planting zucchini, squash, like yellow squash, pumpkin, or watermelon in these garden beds ever again because they just take up too much room. I'll leave this entirely for like smaller vegetables, broccolis, tomatoes, other stuff like that. I might even plant cucumber out the front where I'll be planting the pumpkin and stuff. I'll show you that in a minute. But cucumber doesn't take up as much room, but it still takes up a little bit of room. So where the cover crop is out the front, instead of planting my pumpkins and stuff in the garden out there, where they take up too much room, I'll be planting it probably like down the bottom here or like in the middle somewhere where the cover crop is, and I'll just let that pumpkin, watermelon and zucchini and whatnot just take over the entire front yard underneath the fruit trees. So there is more than enough crawling space for those type of vines, and they'll produce a lot more fruit out here with more space. It'll be another ground cover in summer, so in amongst the chop and drop ground cover I'll be planting in summer, I'll have the pumpkin and stuff. Another advantage of a ground cover is it blocks out weeds. So the pumpkin and watermelon and the ground cover here, that was the fence, is going to stop any weeds coming up, because on this side the grass is just taken over, and I've pulled a lot of grass out from like down the front here, but it's coming back pretty quick. So this ground cover and any vegetables I plant out the front will definitely drown out those weeds, and I won't have to pick them, and I won't have to spend as much time out the front weeding. More time picking fruit and eating it. That's another thing the permaculture course has taught me as well, is to plant many varieties with each other, see what companion planting works, try and spread the variety of plants you have in your garden. I can't remember if it was one of the videos or in a book I read, but they said, no, it was in one of the videos, a normal garden like in your backyard like this will have like 100 to 150 varieties of plant, whereas if you've got an acreage and you've got like a fruit forest or like a massive farm, you can have up to 4,000 different varieties of plants. So the nursery you need to propagate 4,000 plants every single year is huge. It would be the size of my house here on a 500 square block. So I'll probably have like a couple of hundred different varieties in here. So I'm trying to diversify as much as possible. Yeah, so it brings in more variety of bugs. It just creates an ecosystem that is more similar to the natural state of a forest or the natural state of the bushland, which is exactly what you want, because that's sustainable, it's the most productive, it's the most efficient, it's the least energy input. So if you have it similar to the bush, you don't have to do any gardening in the bush looks after itself. So if we can get the garden doing that, we don't have to do any work, we just take what we need from the garden when we need it. Anyway, that's it for this episode. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. And stay tuned, because in the next few weeks I'll be keeping you updated on all the progress that I'll be doing and how the seedlings are doing. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and tell your friends. And I'll see you next time. Bye. This is what I didn't want. These little birds out the front. Stop eating my seeds! Get out of it! I'm gonna go scare him away. Not on my watch.